have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And
much better this week, although I still have a little, cough medicine here, just in case.
We're glad.
Yeah.
But you were quite the trooper last week. We're coming right up on World AIDS Day, so we're going to talk a lot about AIDS news at the top of the show, starting with the fact that the CDC says that only 30% of people with HIV in this country are taking and adhering to medications, and not nearly enough HIV-negative people are on PrEP.
And the other top story, of course, this week continues to be terrorism, the war in Syria, and as all that escalates and we continue to be scared out of our minds, Congress, including 3 members of the LGBTQ caucus, voted to punish the refugees our interventions in the Middle East have created.
In Dallas, the police are finally responding to a big wave of gay bashings.
We have news from all over the world of progress: China, Vietnam, Guatemala, Ireland, Portugal, and Arkansas.
Yes. For the first time, a Hollywood producer is pushing transgender actresses for nominations during awards season.
Andy will review Bruce Willis and Laurie Metcalf in Misery on Broadway.
And Anne will tell you her opinion on Carol, starring Cate Blanchett.
The official lesbian review. Stay tuned.
Well, we are upon World AIDS Day, December 1st. We have a lot of events to tell you about that are happening around the country. But the big news is from the CDC.
Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, an arm of the federal government,
which says that what should be an alarming statistic for all of us to take to heart, that only 30% of people who have HIV in this country are both taking the medications that needed to control it and adhering to the medications to the point where they will be undetectable. And the way that we're going to get the epidemic under control, bring it to zero, which is the big goal for 2020 in this country, is by having people who have HIV on the drugs so that they're not spreading it to other people.
For years, we've been talking about the number of people who know they have it, the number of people being newly infected, and the number of people who don't know. But really, the key statistic is, once you get people tested, do you get them into treatment, and treatment that is top level and consistent? And the idea that only 30% of people known to have HIV in this country are controlling their virus to an undetectable level is just shameful in 2015.
Well, there's also the story out of Atlanta this week. It's number 5 in U.S. cities for new HIV diagnoses, but routine testing is not offered there.
And the CDC recommended routine testing years ago of everybody at regular health exams. It should be something that everybody has, because anybody could acquire HIV.
And as a result of the fact that they don't do routine testing in Atlanta, half of newly diagnosed people with HIV have AIDS already when they get diagnosed.
Meaning they progress to a level of illness. I have to say all this reporting about Charlie Sheen in the last couple of weeks, who is one of the 30% with undetectable viral load, has said, you know, he has HIV, but he doesn't have AIDS. And I fear that people are confused that AIDS is simply a marker along a spectrum of HIV infection, and really is an indication of peril to the patient about illness. It's not about well, you have HIV, but you don't have this disease called AIDS, which is dangerous to others or whatever.
Well, exactly. But it is still, of course, an official diagnosis that you do get after a certain point, and that, of course, determines whether you're entitled to certain benefits and all those kinds of things as well.
But more and more, when we've reported here ad nauseum, the studies that indicate that once you are diagnosed as having HIV, you should be seriously considering treatment, because you do want to suppress the virus as completely and early as possible. So well, that's the key factor. If you have HIV, you should be considering treatment.
Now, in New York City, they've appropriated in the city council $6.6 million for pre- and post-exposure prophylaxis. They want to. New York is getting a little jealous of San Francisco, which got their new diagnoses down to 300 folks, under 300. Which is remarkable. Of course, part of it is
a smaller city.
Yes, and part of it is because they pushed a lot of their poor people out of the city.
Exactly.
But 90% of new infections in New York State are in New York City, and it's part of the plan to end AIDS. The state put up $10 million. This is not nearly what was requested, by the way, in terms of these programs.
But it is. We're beginning to see subway ads advocating for pre-exposure prophylaxis, a once-a-day Truvada pill to keep people uninfected who are having unprotected sex fairly regularly with partners of unknown HIV status, which is why you should be considering PrEP.
And the CDC says that there are 21,000 people now taking PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, in the United States. But they say that 1.2 million people need to be taking it. 1 in 4 gay and bisexual men, 1 in 5 IV drug users, and 1 in 200 heterosexual adults need to be taking Truvada. Now, not to confuse you, but of the 1.2 million people living with HIV now in the United States, again, repeating that statistic, only 30% are on the retrovirals.
And undetectable, and they're in their viral load, and therefore virtually impossible to transmit the virus. But that leaves 75% who can transmit the virus. So this is a big issue now, and there are a lot of factors, I think, that mitigate against people taking Truvada. A, they don't know about it. B, their doctors don't know about it.
I had a lot of people on Facebook say that. My doctor had never heard of it.
Yeah. Amazing, all this continuing medical education, but doctors are woefully ignorant. And then there's the resistance of people themselves who don't want to go on a daily pill to prevent something as opposed to treat something. And that's men versus women who have gotten used to using birth control for many decades now. We
all need to be educated. And we recommend that you go to the CDC website at www.cdc.gov, and you can read all about it, about how a daily pill can prevent HIV. This is something that we've been working for a long time, and now it's here. And certainly there are alternative methods like safe sex, using condoms, engaging in sexual practices that don't risk spreading the virus. We ought to still use condoms to prevent all the other STIs that are out there. Well, that's another piece of information we've gotten in the last couple of weeks, and we hear this continually too, periodically, which is the severe uptick in other sexually transmitted infections, gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, particularly among men having sex with men. So that is a condom issue rather than a Truvada issue. And there's also the whole pharmaceutical issue. We have got to do something to get pharmaceutical costs under control in this country. Truvada is an extremely expensive drug, and a lot of Medicaid systems don't want to pay for it in certain states and things like that. And then we have the case of touring Pharmaceutical, this thing run by this punk, Martin Shkreli, who promised he was going to drop the price from $750 a pill, not down to $13.50 again, and then he didn't. He lied. He said, I'll do it for hospitals, I'll do it for certain poor people, things like that.
This is Daraprim, the drug that works against toxoplasmosis, which is the brain infection, and is very important to people living with HIV and others with toxoplasmosis. And yes, he's been playing the shell game of promising to drop the price. In Britain, by the way, this drug costs 66 cents a pill. And it is cheaper to go to London on vacation for a couple of weeks and get a big supply of Daraprim and bring it back rather than pay Shkreli's price for
Don't
Daraprim.
go there for PrEP because they haven't authorized it yet under the NHS. Okay. Now the other big pharmaceutical story this week, and again every company is guilty of this, of price gouging, but then there's Pfizer and Allegra merging in a $160 billion deal. That'll be great for consumers. And of course, and the profits all go to Ireland.
Because they're moving, this is Pfizer's way of moving its profits out of the U.S. so they can avoid a lot of taxes.
It's just outrageous. A couple of other things that are happening you ought to know about. You know, one of the reasons we got into this fix around AIDS is because the New York Times wouldn't cover HIV/AIDS. They would not cover it in the beginning. They just wouldn't cover it. It's one of the great scandals of the 20th century. So,
and when they did cover it, they covered it strictly as a medical story and not as a political story.
So Ann Northrup is among those on a panel at the Columbia Journalism School on the AIDS reporting of the late Jeffrey Schmaltz of the Times, who died of AIDS. This is Tuesday, December 1st at 6 p.m. at the Brown Institute for Media Innovation. It's at 2950 Broadway at 116th Street. It's free. They'd like you to register online by going to their website, which is brwn.co. /dying words, because this is a book about Jeffrey Schmaltz, and you're all going to discuss it. I'm going to be there. It sounds very interesting.
Yes, and I've read it. It's basically, it was done as a radio documentary and transcribed as a short book. The author, Samuel Friedman, who's the religion columnist for the Times and a professor at the Columbia J School, interviewed a lot of people about Jeff Schmaltz. It talks about his life and about his AIDS reporting. And I knew Jeff, and you may have too. A lot of us did. So it should be an interesting conversation. But I guess I'm there as the activist to complain about the reporting. But with any luck, we'll get you home in time to turn on HBO at 9 p.m. to see the Vice special, Countdown to Zero, which is an hour-long special about the search for a cure for HIV and AIDS.
And earlier in the day, you may want to go to the World AIDS Day rally at the Apollo Theater, which is 253 West 125th Street in Harlem. That's also World AIDS Day, December 1st from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's free and open to the public.
And the other AIDS-related story I have is that the Twitter Corporation held a blood drive at its headquarters last week, and a gay employee was rejected from the blood drive because, of course, the regulations say that if you're a gay man who's had sex with another man in the last year.
Used to be forever.
Yes.
It used to be 1977.
Yeah, but now it's only a year. You cannot donate blood. No actual risk evaluation, and no risk evaluation of anyone who isn't a gay man. It's just gay men. So Twitter, to their credit, has ended their corporate blood drives until the ban is lifted completely and a saner system is put into place.
And it is a good week for contemplating what's going on with the HIV/AIDS crisis, and we recommend you drop down to the NYU Fales Library there at 70 Washington Square South for the exhibit Positive Negative HIV/AIDS, which is open from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday through January 15th.
And I'll also note that the New York State AIDS Institute put out a report this week on vulnerability of transgender people in New York State to HIV infection, and talking about poverty and unemployment and no health insurance and all the factors that really are in play here.
And HIV isn't our only problem, of course, medical problem. there's a new best practices report out on LGBT people and cancer. I didn't have this as a Chiron, I forgot to do that, but you go to lgbthealthlink.org. lgbthealthlink.org, and they've got a new whole best practices site there for LGBT people and cancer.
Okay. Well, let's turn to the other big story, which is terror.
Yeah.
Ugh. So things remain scary in the world, and we have an eye on several aspects of that, and most prominently, probably, this bill that went through Congress, pushed by the Republicans, to slow down or stop entirely the plan to bring any Syrian refugees into this country.
I hope you understand you're being played by the Congress, because it's very easy to obtain a tourist visa to the United States or just to come in as a tourist from Europe, which is where a lot of these terrorists that have just perpetrated the Paris stuff were from and could easily have traveled to the United States.
Without a visa.
So there's no stepping up of any of that. No, let's just go after the Syrian and Iraqi refugees.
Who are going to spend...
Why are there so many Syrian and Iraqi refugees? Could it be because of our illegal wars in the Middle East that we perpetrated? This is so horrifying. It's like, it's World War II all over again in terms of how we treated the Jews and kept them out of the country, when they needed to come here, and others. How we interred the Japanese. We all say it's never going to happen again. We're so sorry about that.
And 3 minutes later,
here we are again. And
the amnesia.
It's so irrational, and what a diversion of resources from all these departments to have to focus on refugees who already go through these 2-year rigorous processes. And I'm not saying anybody couldn't get through, but the problem is I feel like singing "Send in the Clowns." Don't bother. They're here. The people who want to hurt us, they already live here. Many of them have already been radicalized. It's a very, very tough problem, and it's not going to be solved by World War III.
Some of them are police officers gunning down young black men in the street in Chicago.
Right. If you want to talk about terror, this is a big campaign of the New York Daily News saying, 2,000 people on the terror watch lists have purchased illegal guns.
The NRA is in favor of that.
Of them being able to purchase guns.
Yes.
Well, exactly. I've even heard some of the right-wingers say, we don't want to let these Syrians and Iraqis in. It's too easy to get guns here. Nothing is ever done after these literally daily mass shootings in the United States. Nothing. Nothing is done about that, and, well, we want to pass. So who voted for this bill? 47 Democrats joined Republicans to vote for this bill to keep out the Syrians and the Iraqis, including 3 of the LGB caucus. You're talking about Sean Patrick Maloney in upstate New York, Kirsten Sinema in Arizona, a bisexual member of Congress, who recently represented an Iraqi refugee and said he was being discriminated against.
Well, Sinema and Maloney have done a lot of voting with Republicans over the last couple of years, and we have noted that on many occasions, and we keep getting pushback that says, well, they're in very dicey districts, and if they don't do that, then a real right-wing Republican is going to take over. We need them there as Democrats for the times when they can vote as Democrats.
But we were especially sorry to see our friend and viewer, Jared Polis, voting for this, Jared. And I know some of you are doing a lot of backtracking in your language and all this kind of stuff.
I'm not against refugees. I just want the vetting process to be stricter.
It's feeding into fear.
It is. And what is...
Well, it's not quite as bad as Donald Trump, and talking about the cheering Muslims in Jersey City.
No, and I also find discouraging the general amnesia is just horrifying, but the idea that people are now sort of saying, well, George Bush had the right idea by sending troops in. That's what created this whole mess.
Please.
And I will repeat, as long as necessary, one has only to look at Vietnam or more recent wars to see that you cannot win wars against indigenous populations in this scorched earth kind of approach. How many decades have we heard this, we're going to bomb them back to the Stone Age rhetoric, which is just nonsense. It is just bravado that has no basis in fact and only gets us into worse trouble.
Now, some big LGBT groups condemned this vote. Others could care less. The Victory Fund, for instance, said, "Oh, you know, we don't track what they do once we elect them. We just want, you know."
Yeah, that was my favorite. We don't follow what they do.
We just want homosexuals to be in the legislatures. That's not what I want.
Well, I want it on some days for some things, but
we all want a seat at the table.
Yeah.
But you've got to, if you don't see your gayness in the context of justice for all, you know, we're always asking for, even demanding support from African American groups, unions, everything else.
Yeah.
We've got to do stuff for them as well if we want their support for our stuff.
Well, P.S. we are them and they are us, and we're all in this together. By the way, the CEO of Equality Illinois, the statewide LGBT rights group there, is a guy named Bernard Cherkasov, who is a refugee from Azerbaijan. We are everywhere, and
we're
they
in your
are
pocket.
Us.
Because Steve Jobs is the son of a Syrian refugee.
There you go.
Or at least immigrant. I'm sorry, I don't know if his
By the way,
father
the
was
Victory
actually
Fund held its leadership summit in Las Vegas last week, which is the big annual conference of LGBT elected officials from across the country. And the theme there was beware the backlash shown to us in Houston.
Well, Houston Mayor Renise Parker said the average age of voters in that election where we lost was 68.
Unbelievable.
I mean, come on, young people. You're the ones who are supposed to have the energy to get out and vote.
Really, the average age of voters in the election was 68. Now, you know, I consider myself youthful, but really, that is incredible.
Back to the a little aspect on the terror story.
Yes.
Salah Abdeslam, 26. He's the fugitive. There he is from the Paris attacks. Well,
he's the eighth guy who is on the run.
He was known to frequent gay bars in Brussels, though it is also believed he did not flirt with men, it says. The bar manager said, "We had him down as a rent boy." He was known for having a string of one-night stands with women. He was supposed to have blown himself up in the attacks, so he is now wanted by both ISIS and the French authorities.
I think they assume that the suicide belt they found in the garbage can in Paris was his.
Yes.
That he threw it away and ran.
Yes, and he was also seen outside the, I think it was the Bataclan, or one of the sites of the attacks, on film, watching the chaos that he and his comrades had perpetrated.
All right. Well, I think that's about all we have on terrorism this week.
Well, let's go to Dallas. There's been a rash of attacks on gay men there. We've been reporting on it. The latest was Jeffrey Hubbard. We have a picture. Yes, we do have a picture of him. He was a bartender at the Tap House. He left work and he was assaulted at 11 p.m. He remains in the ICU with skull fracture. He was robbed as well during this attack. So now the Dallas police are saying, well, 12 gay bashings, maybe it's time to do something. And they're trying to do some coordinated thing. They've set up a task force.
This is all in the Oak Lawn neighborhood of Dallas where these attacks have occurred. And it seems very strange. Also,
well, I think some of it was stirred up by all the talk in Texas about the Houston thing and gay rights, and that's.
And here's some more. In Jacksonville, Florida, they are proposing a non-discrimination ordinance there covering sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And they've been getting some very scary threats. The one guy's arrested for phoning in a bomb threat, and these. Ku Klux Klan flyers have been posted around town.
There's one.
Stop AIDS. I can't read it beyond that. But it's all anti-gay. It has that symbol which is meant to condemn gay men.
I think they got that from the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, there are some racist statements on there too, and it's signed by the Ku Klux Klan with a website address to go talk to them.
Yeah, I went to the website. This is the White Knights, something like that. This is the real Klan.
Still active in the South.
And elsewhere, online.
Yeah.
All right. In Chicago, a suit was settled in the 2013 case of men who were thrown out of a taxi for exchanging a brief kiss. The driver got fired over this, but he was brought back to apologize. Sun Taxi agreed to train all the staff on the Illinois Human Rights Act and your responsibilities under it.
Nice. In Wisconsin, there is an anti-transgender student bathroom bill advancing in the legislature in spite of the fact that the U.S. Department of Education voided the Illinois version of that bill. So the Wisconsin legislature is just defying the U.S. rules and saying, no, we're going to pass this bill that does not allow transgender students to use the bathroom of their current gender identity.
Well, in Utah, we told you how they passed a limited LGBT rights law with a lot of exemptions in May, but it seems to be having the chilling effect you want on discrimination. Only 3 discrimination complaints have been filed since the law was passed in May.
Well, we've always said that there weren't a lot of discrimination complaints.
It's hard to bring a case.
Yeah.
Because, look, a lot of people have been discriminated against, and it's very hard to prove discrimination oftentimes.
Well, here's another opportunity. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has issued a proposed rule, published a proposed rule, that shelters for homeless people must house transgender people by their chosen gender identity.
In San Diego, we told you about Carl DeMaio, who ran for Congress in 2014, gay guy. He was hit by scandal during that campaign, but the guy who brought the charges against him, a former aide named Tom Basnick, was placed on 5 years probation for fabricating an angry email from his boss, who he accused of demanding sex and all these kinds of things, and it turned out to be a fraud.
We're going to get to more fraud in Moscow when we get to international news. But meanwhile, in Tennessee, the ACLU is suing Giles County Schools. They told a lesbian student that she could not wear a T-shirt that said, "Some people are gay, get over it." The school told her that was disruptive.
They said it was sexual. That's what they said.
She'd worn it all day long with no incidents at all. It was at the end of the day they told her to take it off. So the ACLU is suing them.
Rebecca Young is her name, and she said, "I just want my school to be safe."
Well, the NCAA would like things to be safe too. The National Collegiate Athletic Association, they, after some controversy over their reaction to the Houston defeat of the Equal Rights Amendment or repeal of it, they are now saying that they will take LGBT rights into consideration when they cite future events. They will look at cities and see whether they have non-discrimination laws. Now, I watched, did you see the Hunting Ground, the documentary on CNN? I watched it this weekend. This is the somewhat controversial documentary by Kirby Dick, who did a great documentary about closeted gay politicians a few years ago. And this one's about
They're not
rape.
Closeted after that documentary.
No, thank heavens. Rape on college campuses. And there's controversy over one of the cases at Harvard and whether the student was inappropriately accused. I have to say, after watching this documentary, it is just case after case after case of very, very sincerely believable women on campuses all over this country testifying to what was done to them. And maybe the most striking moment is when one young man, student, says, "Oh, so the new rule is that she says no, and if you have sex, that's rape?" Yes, that is the rule. So I would like the NCAA to also take into account the accusations against 200 colleges and universities of inappropriate responses to charges of rape on campus.
Not to in any way trivialize this. There was a great little thing I posted on my Facebook page at one point about comparing it to would you like tea? In terms of asking for consent during a sexual relationship. When people say to you, no, I do not want tea, you do not shove it down their throats.
Exactly.
You know, and it goes on and on like that to say.
Maybe that is more understandable to people.
Exactly. And it's just about, it's the
even
same
if
thing,
they're drunk.
the same thing about sex.
You do not pour it down their throat.
Or throw it all over them.
Yeah.
All right.
Horrible. But I would recommend the hunting ground.
Okay. In Louisiana, the anti-gay, anti-woman Republican David Vitter, famous for his relationship with sex workers and possibly trying to fund abortions, lost the runoff for governor to John Bell Edwards. Now, he's described as a Catholic social conservative, but this Edwards also said, I'm going to do, Medicaid expansion in the state, and that's all to the good.
Anything's better than David Vitter.
Yep, and Vitter is not going to run again for Senate.
And in Tucson, Arizona, they have hired a gay police chief from Richmond, California.
Christopher Magnus.
Who they say has a great record with the community in Richmond, so everyone's looking
Yes, he was already the first police chief in the country to marry a person of the same sex, his partner Terrence Leone.
But he had a great relationship with the community, and that is something we're desperately in favor of.
The controversy continues in Michigan, where Dana Nessel, who was the private attorney on the big same-sex marriage case, will not be dissuaded from trying to get an initiative on the 2016 ballot to protect LGBT rights. The mainstream groups are opposed to this, and she says, I won't talk to anyone about stopping. So I believe things should be done by the people in coalition, not by individuals. But good luck in getting hundreds of thousands of signatures. But you're subjecting then the whole state to a big drag-out fight in 2016.
It's tough to tell. We're not on the ground there.
No.
It's stalled in the legislature.
Right.
Well, in Lewisburg, West Virginia, population 3,830, local lesbians are trying to pass a non-discrimination ordinance there, and they seem to be getting a lot of support.
Lewisburg. I think about 7 or 8 towns in West Virginia have those laws. Pride at Work is upset at HRC for giving Walmart a 90% rating on its corporate equality index despite its labor practices and multiple LGBT discrimination suits against it.
Back at the White House, they issued a statement marking the Transgender Day of Remembrance and honoring the dead, which is a significant part of that Day of Remembrance. And they issued a list of 9 LGBT champions of change, which they do periodically, one of whom was this woman, Fiona Dawson, who's been working for years on this documentary, Transgender at War and in Love, about trans service members serving openly. And she did a version of it that the New York Times put online. Excuse me.
Go ahead. Well, of course, I'm going to go off on a tangent about what else happened at the White House this week. They gave out the National Medals of Honor.
Freedom.
Oh, is it freedom? Okay, freedom. To 16 on Monday, including out gay Stephen Sondheim, not out Barbara Mikulski.
That was discouraging.
And to gay icon Barbara Streisand, among others.
Yes, and the Senate has confirmed former representative and former candidate for governor of Maine, Mike Michaud, out gay, as Assistant Secretary of Labor for Veterans Employment and Training.
California and Oregon are making contraceptives available without a prescription. Senate Republicans want to expedite over-the-counter approval, and Dems want to make sure it will still be covered by insurance without a prescription. All right, and what else is in the news? Michael Samms told TMZ he wants to play in the NFL next year. And let's move on.
Nathan Lane has married his partner of 18 years, Devlin Elliott.
We got a picture of with Joy Behar there. There's Nathan, and I didn't realize his much taller boyfriend who's been together with David, who was a producer and playwright.
They just went down to City Hall and got married very simply.
Yeah.
And in Arkansas, a judge has ruled that married same-sex couples can put both parents on the birth certificates of their children, although the state health department is trying to stop that ruling.
And another crime story in Philadelphia, Catherine Knott, who's accused of assaulting gay men with a group of friends last September. The rest of them pled guilty, took something. The judge ruled her anti-gay tweets are admissible. Her lawyer calls that character assassination. We will see how that plays out.
Let us move to international news.
No,
you have something else before you get there?
I mean, Marco Rubio says same-sex marriage is not settled law, folks. And he said that God's rules always win.
Yeah, well, Ted Cruz...
And if that's true, she's doing a very bad job.
Ted Cruz is on the same line, and the two of them are scary.
International news.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in China, gay activists were in court demanding that the education ministry remove books describing homosexuality as an affliction. And we have a picture there of Chen Qi-yan, who's a student, 20, who was campaigning for this for months and got to meet with two education officials in the presence of a judge. They didn't reach an agreement, but they, at least this discussion took place. The officials said, we don't control the curricula. And Chen basically said, this is China. What do you mean you don't control the curricula? Anyway.
I think what they meant is their bosses control the curriculum.
Well, the Chinese Society of Psychiatry removed homosexuality and bisexuality from its list of mental disorders in 2001. So why are they still publishing books and using them in colleges that say it is an affliction?
Well, here's my favorite story. The U.S. Embassy in Moscow, Russia, published a fake letter that the Russian government had put out. They said it was from the U.S. gay rep Randy Berry to Nikolai Alexeyev, the gay activist in Russia, that it was they were putting together a scheme to discredit Putin by claiming top bank and airport officials were gay. Izvestia had reported on this letter. So the U.S. Embassy says, publishes it with all sorts of corrections all over it, correcting the spelling and the grammar.
It's like one of those solicitations you get from Nigeria. You know,
and the U.S. Embassy, which I thought this was very bold of them to do this, they said, you know, the next time you want to print a fake letter and drum up one of these schemes, send it to us first and we'll correct all the spelling for you before you publish it and claim it.
All right. Vietnam passed landmark law enshrining transgender rights. It paves the way for gender reassignment surgery.
In Israel, the court has rejected the plea of the family that wanted to bury their transgender daughter as a man and stop her from being cremated. The court stood up for the transgender woman who committed suicide a couple of weeks ago.
But Saudi Arabia sentenced poet and artist Ashraf Fayyad to death for apostasy based on poems he'd written a long time ago. He'd been sentenced to 4 years and 800 blows, but then he was retried and found guilty of spreading atheism and threatening the morals of Saudi society. So we will not be traveling to Saudi Arabia anytime soon.
No.
The coin of the realm here on Gay USA.
No. President Obama, however, was in Malaysia last week. Now, he says he raised human rights issues with the Prime Minister. And he met with leaders of a transgender group and members of the National Security Council, the U.S. National Security Council, met with the family of Anwar Ibrahim, whose saga we've been following for about 9 million years
He's
now.
the opposition leader, and he's in for sodomy, which is a trumped-up charge.
In prison, that is.
Yes.
But Obama had promised, you know, he's there trying to sell this Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement, which we don't like because it doesn't mention human rights, and it props up the U.S. pharmaceutical companies. So everyone's been criticizing him for that. So he's been saying, no, don't worry, I'll raise these issues. And so evidently he did.
In Guatemala,
To what end?
in
Who
Guatemala, Sandra Moran is the first openly LGBTI member of Congress there in Guatemala.
Very good.
But in Colombia, the Constitutional Court has delayed a decision on legalizing same-sex marriage that we were anticipating this week.
But in the Faroe Islands, which are a part of Denmark, they had the first parliamentary reading of a same-sex marriage bill, so things are advancing there.
Now in Canada, the new Prime Minister Trudeau followed through and put in a transgender rights bill from the government, but transgender rights groups are protesting, saying it only covers gender identity and not gender expression. They want more.
Exactly.
We want more.
Spain has granted asylum to a Russian LGBT activist, Natalia Simbalova, who had a 30 pages long explanation of how she had been harassed and threatened in Russia, plus 200 pages of appendixes. Or appendices. So congratulations to Spain and to Natalia.
And to Ireland. We already know that they voted for same-sex marriage. Now the parliament there wants to end religious exemptions to the human rights laws for church, especially the gay rights laws, for church, schools, and hospitals. They say the institution now has to prove the employment of a person who's gay or lesbian, bisexual, damages the religious mission of the institution if they're going to try to discriminate against them.
And in Portugal, the parliament has okayed adoption by same-sex couples, but it needs to be signed by the conservative president there. I haven't heard whether he's going to sign it.
Right, we don't know. He had voted against marriage equality in 2010.
But it passed. The adoption bill seemed to have passed by large margins, so maybe they can...
Well, it was all the leftist parties getting together and doing that. Yeah. In the Gambia, they just outlawed female genital mutilation. No sign that President Yahya Jammeh is letting up on gays, but this mutilation affects 3/4 of the women there, and it's seen as a tough stand that could cost him the election. It is also banned in Nigeria, Central African Republic, Egypt, and South Africa, but in Somalia, 98% of girls are subjected to it. And as long as we're in Africa, in Nigeria, 21 men were arrested for having anal sex, students in 2 government-run schools. And the activists there say this is just a charge they bring because they don't like the students.
'Twas ever thus. Canada, by the way, will accept Syrian refugees, but maybe not single straight men. They will take families, they'll take gay men, but they're a little leery of single straight men. It sounds a little discriminatory.
Well, I was going to say.
What?
No, I'm not going to say it.
Okay. We do bite our tongues on this show occasionally.
Sometimes.
In Leeds, England, Vicky Thompson, 21 years old, a transgender woman found dead in a men's prison. She had asked to be assigned to a women's prison and refused. Another transgender woman was, after a large public campaign, reassigned to a women's prison recently, but not Vicky, and she did not survive men's prison.
In Wales, a 10-year-old boy won 2nd place in a swim contest, but was disqualified because he used to be a girl. It's like screwed up. So they say he wore the wrong trunks.
Please.
And his mother said, when you find a transgender bathing suit, let me know. The child also has autism. The head of inclusion at the school is protesting, and Swim Wales is also intervening, and the disqualifiers then claimed that it was a technical fault. You know, come on, they always make excuses.
Look, I will say that these issues pop up everywhere in places you would not expect, and all of it ends up leading to progress. So I'm happy about that. But it is just fascinating the way these issues are fought out at the grassroots level in so many places. That's why we sit here doing this every week, is to exclaim over these unexpected
stories. You are making history out there. Make more.
And a lesbian couple in the Cook Islands in the Pacific is making history by fighting authorities to be allowed to renew their marriage vows on a well-known beach there. The authorities are against that.
Entertainment news.
Yes.
Well, I'll start off with some good news.
Okay.
Misery. I saw the stage adaptation of Misery, the Stephen King novel. That was the movie with James Caan and Kathy Bates. Now it's with Bruce Willis and Laurie Metcalf. And I didn't go in with extra high expectations.
That may be the secret.
And it's hilarious. And I had a great time. So it's no intermission, a lot of fun. And you know the story if you've seen the movie, but still, it's fun to see it played out on stage.
I have not seen the movie.
Oh. I meant.
But I know in general the story. Yeah.
Yes.
So nice to have something to recommend.
Yes.
Well, we may also be liking something due out not for another 8 months or so. Another AbFab movie, absolutely fabulous for those of you who haven't been following it. Chris Colfer.
That's not the picture.
That's not the picture.
I don't know what that's a picture of.
What is that?
I don't know. Get it off the screen, whatever it is.
Yeah. Now, we have a picture of Chris Colfer with Jennifer Saunders and Joanna Lumley.
Yes. Well, we thought we did. Anyway, Chris Colfer of Glee, and he said working with them is a dream come true.
He's going to play
Sweetie
a hairdresser and media consultant in the new AbFab movie due out in July 2016. That might have been a picture of him.
It might have been a picture of Chris Colfer, but not with Jennifer Saunders. And,
no.
Anyway, controversy over the new Zoolander 2 movie. This is the vehicle for Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller. The first one was funny.
Well, so Benedict Cumberbatch is in this one, and he was hailed for his portrayal of Alan Turing, the gay codebreaker of World War II. He's being assailed for his transgender character in this. They're calling it the equivalent of blackface and transphobic, but we haven't seen it, of course. And but there's a petition about it.
And news about Reed Ewing, who plays Dylan on Modern Family.
There he is.
Yeah, he has come out. He
Casually.
Yes.
You know, you just said you're gay, don't you? He said,
well,
yeah.
This was a whole story about body dysmorphia and how he hated his body and had a lot of surgery and implants and injections.
Yes.
And, I mean, how old is he, 12?
No, I mean, I think he's in his early 20s.
But in the midst of it, he said something about as a gay man, and whoever was interviewing him sort of exclaimed about that.
He was addicted to cosmetic surgery, and he's over it.
Now, you saw the George Takei play, Allegiance,
yes.
And one of the stars of that is Lea Salonga, who was
fame from, come on.
Yeah.
Miss Saigon.
Thank you.
Right?
Oh, thank you. That was a good rescue. Well, she is going to go to the Philippines with the play Fun Home, the Alison Bechdel lesbian Tony Award-winning musical.
The best
Fun
thing
Home.
On Broadway right now.
Yeah, and she's going to produce it or take it to the Philippines and play the mother in the play.
Very conservative country.
Yeah.
I hope it makes a difference to do it there.
I think that sounds great.
So you may have heard of the movie Tangerine about a pair of transgender sex workers played by transgender women, Katana Kiki Rodriguez and Maya Taylor. Well, they are being backed by the film's producers in the Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress categories. This is apparently the first such push for transgender actresses in the history of film. Now, it's been done on television, as you know, but Variety says this is historic. Doesn't mean they're going to get nominated, but they're being pushed.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And our condolences to The Soup, which has been canceled by E! Our fame was...
It's gone? It's gone? They're not gonna...
No, they have a few more episodes.
They can still do us again.
Well, they haven't recently, because I've been keeping an eye on it. But Joel McHale and the crew at The Soup have been doing a great show for a long time, including, much to our shock and amazement, and certainly with no notice to us, clips from Gay USA occasionally, which they refer to, of course, as their favorite Japanese show, Gay USA. I always wanted to put a little Hello Kitty doll on the desk.
Instead of Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy.
Exactly. But they're being canceled, and we will miss you.
Can we
crowd
talk
there.
about the new Todd Haynes film, Carol?
We can.
You have seen it. This is with Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara.
Correct. Based on the Patricia Highsmith book, The Price of Salt.
That she wrote anonymously back in the 50s,
Well,
I think.
pseudonym.
Yeah, pseudonym.
Thank you.
I don't know what the other word is.
She used a pseudonym, and I'm sorry, I'm still sick. That's my excuse.
But Carol, tell us about Carol.
Highly anticipated.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Very well received.
There they are.
Well,
that's Cate Blanchett there on the right.
yes, and Rooney Mara on the left. Rooney Mara is the sales girl. Cate Blanchett as a customer who's about to forget her gloves on the counter at the department store at Christmas time, buying a train set for her daughter. Talked into it by Rooney Mara, who said, forget the doll, buy her a train set. You saw Far From Heaven, the Todd Haynes movie with Julianne Moore and Dennis Haysbert and Dennis Quaid as the closeted husband.
Yes.
You know, that got a lot of great talk too, and I found it a little bloodless. I thought it was a little too stylized, a little too mannered. Somehow it's very lush in its look because he's trying to copy these 50s movies.
Douglas Sirk.
Yes.
Films.
So they look very rich and gorgeous and very true to the period, but somehow the real emotion was not quite there for me in Far From Heaven. And I have to say I had some of the same feeling about this one. People are asking me, would you recommend it? And I say, well, yes, I think it's worth seeing, but it's not what I wanted it to be. It's not the really full-blooded emotion. You know, if I'm going to go to a lesbian movie with Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, for heaven's sakes, playing a couple, I expect to be, and it didn't quite grab me that way. It has its moments.
I love Cate Blanchett, but you're saying this is not her personal best?
Well, I was thinking about other movies.
It's a reference to a great lesbian movie.
Well, I started thinking about other lesbian movies, and I could immediately tick off movies like Bound or Personal Best or Desert Hearts that all were much more emotional and involving, much more real life. And this is
That doesn't interest Todd Haynes as much.
No, Haynes.
Haynes, sorry. Oh, Haynes is the guy at the, sorry.
Haynes,
Theater guy.
Haynes.
You know, I'm sorry.
It's much more surface. It's and Carol's a little slow. It has its moments, certainly. The ending is a nice payoff.
Don't tell me what happens.
I'm not going to. But I wanted so much more, and it really just did not give me the emotional payoff that I wanted.
Can we get the gay male perspective on this? Chris Cooper liked it. I mean, he had some criticisms, but he said it's a constant invitation and do yourself a favor and accept. So.
Well, you know, we all love Chris and love his reviews, and he does great stuff, but I am wondering whether a gay man who saw a gay male movie that was this sort of distanced.
Right. I always criticize films, you know, for not just like, you know, I don't know what they did with love scenes in this movie.
They have one big sex scene. That's fine. You know, it's not as sexy as the Desert Hearts sex scene. Or probably The Hunger, for that matter.
Right. With Susan Sarandon.
Yeah, so should you see it? Sure. Should you go rushing to the theater expecting a lot? No.
Well, Chris also gives us his review, and we put his full reviews in our emails, which if you're on our email list to get weekly notices, you can have. But he also is the gay-themed Legend. Now, Legend is about the Cray brothers, one of whom was openly gay back in the early 60s, I believe. These were gangsters, basically. And Tom Hardy plays both the brothers. That's Tom Hardy in each scene, and part of the fun apparently of watching the movie is watching them fight with each other. And you say, how the hell did they do that? He says Tom Hardy's strong performance in the dual role of the Cray twins is strong, but too bad about the storytelling, helmed by writer-director Brian Hegland, feels stitched together. Well, I'm still curious to see it, though.
And I'm trying to decide whether, I talk about other lesbian movies. There's another one from Australia being issued by Wolf Video next week, all about E, that's advertised as adventure and romance and laughs. There are a lot of these things around, but I'm looking for a real blockbuster that really grabs me by the throat. I'll tell you one thing that grabbed me by the throat was another documentary. I've seen a lot of documentaries recently, and this is another one that's playing on HBO. 3.5 minutes, 10 bullets, which is about the shooting in Jacksonville, Florida, of a young black man by a middle-aged white man who was annoyed at him turning up the music in his car, and claimed to be threatened and afraid as the guy's driving away. Right. Driving away. And he pumps 10 bullets into the car.
Pathological racism, and in their own heads, this is what's going on. I have to do this. If you sit there watching Fox News all day, your head does get filled with this kind of stuff.
Well, the crucial moment in
Not
this...
to mention going on the White Knights of the Klan site.
Well, Jacksonville, Florida, where they're putting out these KKK flyers against non-discrimination ordinance. And this guy in this documentary, this 3.5 minutes, 10 bullets, they've recorded his jail phone calls to his girlfriend. And he says repeatedly in these phone calls, I don't know what they're doing. I'm the victim here. I am the victim here. And they're talking sympathetically about this kid. I'm sure someday he would have killed somebody. I am the victim.
Well, maybe this is why white mortality in the United States is going up. They're all feeling besieged.
Well, I have immersed myself in a lot of documentaries recently, which are much more illuminating and moving to me than some of these movies and plays, which I think are pallid by comparison.
And I don't like talking about shows that I walked out of, but I did walk out of The Illusionists, which is a magic show. It's kind of a Vegas show from the 50s or something. And I have to say the comedian they have opening the show and sort of stringing it together is first of all, he sort of acts like Liberace, but closeted, and makes a lot of off-color sex jokes and things like that, which was just a lot hard to bear. And then one of the first magic tricks is a really crazy-looking guy eating razor blades. So one mother grabbed her young child and marched up the aisle immediately to get the hell away from that. So there are some good magicians in it, but please, don't do offensive humor in 2015.
Actually, one of the more, I've listed several things I found moving this week. One of them was actually on the American Music Awards, which I would bet my life you did not see.
You're correct. You can live.
Thank you. Barely, evidently. The Celine Dion tribute to Paris by singing an Edith Piaf song was terrific, and so was Alanis Morissette and Demi Lovato singing You Ought to Know. But the thing that really moved me was Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, their new song. They're the ones who did a gay song a year or two ago. And their new song is about addiction to prescription drugs. And it's really a blockbuster.
It's a massive problem in this country.
It is, and that song really will blow you away.
Well, good.
So anyway.
I'll go home and watch it now, even though I didn't watch the American Music Awards.
I bet you could find it on YouTube.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes.
And we will see you next week. We hope there's not much news because you'll all be just having fun.
Yes. All right. See you next week.
Bye.